This week in the Parsha talks about the paraduma, the red heifer, and this is just one of the rituals that it says in Chazal. The other nations, they question us. They say, what type of work is this? This looks like some type of magic. What are we doing over here? We're burning a cow. We're using whatever is left mixed in with different things. And then we're spraying it on somebody and we're saying, okay, now that this has happened to you, now you're okay. Now you're different. Something changed. Where did it change? What happened? On what level are we interacting over here? And so this looks like some form of magic. This looks like some form of a ritual that was designed strictly for the imagination, to convince the human imagination of a story that doesn't really have any basis in reality. And so therefore it makes it difficult to believe, because Klal Yisrael is based on a principle that we don't believe in superstition. We don't believe in forces and symbols that direct the imagination. We believe that the intelligence created life in a way that allows for us to have a meaningful experience, allows for us to interact with life in a way that builds intelligence, in a way that satisfies the spirit, satisfies the soul. And so when we tell somebody not to steal, the spirit is calm. The spirit is happy with that understanding. Okay, we shouldn't steal. You're right, it makes sense. I don't like it when somebody steals from me. I shouldn't do it to the other person. It's very nice. But when you tell the spirit about burning a cow, if the spirit is wise, if the spirit feels that this is her home and things are supposed to make sense to it over here, then it asks a question. What's taking place over here? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? And so the question arises with the red heifer, but it's not the only one. It's one of them that the Torah calls a choik. What's the nature of a choik? The nature of a choik is that it's a law that you cannot question, because you don't deserve to know the answer. You're not ready to know the answer. You can't handle the answer. That's the nature of a choik. And that's why in ancient times there were the priests that created the chukim, the mechokek. They would create the laws, and the laws would be enforced by the king. They would be enforced by soldiers. They would be enforced by force if necessary. And the citizens didn't have a right to question those laws. Those laws were made based on the wisdom, the understanding of the leaders of what is necessary in order to run the people, in order to run the country. But the chukim that run a country are chukim that are mostly understandable. In the Torah we have chukim, we have laws that are understandable. They're called mishpatim. Mishpatim are laws that make sense to the shikul hadat, to the opinion of the human mind. And chukim are laws that don't make sense to the human mind, like the paraduma, like the red heifer. And so to understand the basis of these laws, of these understandings, a person would have to be at a level where it wouldn't change him, it wouldn't change his behavior if he understood the inner workings of the laws, of the design of the world, of the design of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created life. And this is why we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells to Moshe that to him he will reveal the reason for this law. To him he will reveal the meaning behind the law. Because the belief, the emunah of Klal Yisrael, is that everything that we do and everything that we are is based in wisdom. Nothing is superstition, nothing is randomly so. Nothing is simply because it happened to be. Everything has a basis, a history, a reason, a purpose, and this is what drives the human race to achieve its ultimate goal. And so when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Klal Yisrael lechoik, he's giving them a law. There's a reason why this law is given. There's a meaning behind it. But the people cannot understand it. Why can't the people understand it? So Moshe Darshan gives a clue. Rashi brings a reason that because Klal Yisrael did the Chet HaEgel, because Klal Yisrael did something that moved them further away from the ultimate belief, from being attached to the truth that they had by Har Sinai. So now we needed something to attach them back. Let the cow come, the mother, and she will clean up the mess that was made by the son, that was made by the egel, that was made by the calf. So the cow is going to come and clean up after the calf. Which means that had there not been an egel, this chak wouldn't exist. The only reason we need this chak, we need to put a rule over here that we can't explain to you, is because by the egel we have proven that we were not ready for what was being said. So if we're not ready for what was being said, we're now going to remove some of the information that was available, and we're not going to allow you to know this stuff because you're not ready, because you've proven that when you were left to your own devices, when you understood what you understood, you didn't stand the test. You didn't know how to behave. You didn't know how to keep reality clean. And therefore, now we're going to give you a mitzvah, give you a symbol, give you an understanding in place that we're not going to explain to you. And only a person that's going to be able to understand the reason for this mitzvah is going to be able to understand why this mitzvah was placed there in the first place. Is going to be able to understand what is the information that was lost from before the egel till after the egel. And so the mitzvahs, this mitzvah, this chok, has a message in it. And Shlomo HaMelech says, Amarti ech kamo v'yerechoike mimeni. I thought that I'm going to become smart. I'm going to understand the purpose of this mitzvah. And yet it is far from me, and yet I didn't understand. So it's not that the Moshe Darshan understood better than Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech was the wisest man ever. The Moshe Darshan was saying, because of the egel, now we need to fix it. But Shlomo HaMelech actually wanted to fix it. He actually understood what the issue was. He actually tried to close the deal, to make it so that Klal Yisrael can go back to the level that they were before the egel. But v'yerechoike mimeni, he couldn't. How far? We're already thousands of years later. That's how far. So still, now we don't have the Efer HaPorah. We can't clean people. Not only are we at the level where we're not like before the egel, where before the egel they didn't need the Efer HaPorah. So after the egel they need the Efer HaPorah. But then at the Chorban HaBayis, after the destruction of the temple, they don't even have the Efer HaPorah. Which means they can't allow themselves to get to a place where they can actually perceive life the way that it really is, where they can actually see the truth the way that they already received it. And this is the reality of today. A person is born He's born into life. He gets to experience all of life. He gets to go through it. And yet he comes to realize that he doesn't have access to the full experience. It's happening, yes, but he or she is not fully there because the understanding, the interaction is not understood. The perception, the spiritual side of life is not pure. And therefore all of life is experienced from a perspective of distance. It's experienced from a perspective of yearning, of searching, of looking for, of building, of creating. And there's no satisfaction of the arrival. Life doesn't have an arrival. People are constantly striving, looking forward, and then eventually it ends. Eventually, life doesn't become what it promised them to be. And so, a person comes into this world in order to learn this world, in order to get to know this world, in order to become the best version that he can of who he already is. He is not meant to become something new. He is not meant to invent anything. His nature is already ingrained within him, ingrained within his organs, ingrained within his heart and his mind. And now he has to discover what that means. That's the journey of life. And when a person opens up to experiencing life in that way, when a person opens up to experiencing the journey, then he can allow life to happen to him. He can allow his mind to go to where life is, to experience what was created by the bigger power, by something else. When a person can't do that, when a person can't surrender to life, then a person is not really fully alive. A person is not really experiencing life. And this is a form of tumah, this is a form of impurity. When a person is in that state, he's not pure with life, he's not performing in life what life needs him to do. He's not connected to the clean source of Mayim Chaim, of knowing his purpose, understanding his potential, and moving towards what is in his best interest. And so, a person has to allow life to happen, which means that he needs to open up his mind to what somebody else designed, to what somebody else created. And this is very difficult for us, because when we're used to interacting with people, we've learned to resist what somebody else says. We've learned to resist, to argue, to debate what comes in from external sources. And when we're directing our attention towards the Creator, it must be the other way. It must be that we receive, that He is the one that gives, because He already gave, He already created, He already made life be as it is. We come in after life is already happening. And so we have to allow life to teach us what it is. We can't tell life what to be. It has to work that way. And so the further we've gone away from seeing life from that perspective, the more distant we've become from seeing reality the way that it is. And this is a form of death. This is a form of being cut off from the reality of life, from really experiencing life the way that it was designed to be, with a full spirit. And so, in order for us to come back to our original glory, in order for us to come back to the wisdom that was driving those people, where everything in life was understood, where they understood the influence of the stars, the influence of the planets on life itself, and the different forces that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created within nature, and how they interact with each other to create our experience. These people had a deep and meaningful experience that related to what's actually happening to them while it was happening. And this is what we're looking for, this is what we want to find, this is what we want to return, so that we should be able to become pure. To become pure means to be able to see life exactly the way that it is, without any imagination that's not allowing you to see life clearly, without any beliefs that are inaccurate, that are giving you a inaccurate representation of what's really taking place around you, of what you're doing and what's taking place, what's being done to you and what you're contributing. So if a person cannot surrender to life, they will never know, they will never understand how much they're causing from what's taking place around them and how much is being caused to them. Only when a person can surrender, only when a person can accept, can they see what's happening around them in true vision. Can they really understand? And that goes to such a deep degree that when a person can do that and be accurate when he perceives life for himself and for the collective, that's called prophecy. That's called that a person has access to the true nature of life, that he understands what are the real causes of what's taking place in people's lives. What are the real causes of their afflictions, of what's causing them suffering? All this is within the language of nature. So we ourselves, we also know what's causing us suffering, because the suffering itself came to us that way. So there's a real truth behind that suffering that some part inside of us knows because it made it happen. But a prophet can understand that in a way that it can be explained to the intellect, it can be expressed in words. It can be manifested into the defined world, the world of the senses. And so prophecy can only happen when we have Efer Poro, when we have the understanding of what this mitzvah represents, what this choik represents. And this choik represents the original ideation of creating schar v'onesh, creating a ladder for Klal Yisrael where they need to climb up before they can be told the truth, where they need to learn a pshat, they need to learn an external language that can later be explained, that can later be revealed to have deeper meaning, to have a deeper understanding. The same way that life became for them, where they became disconnected from the truth, life became to them like a pshat. Life became to them like a distant reality that doesn't have anything to do with the divine, doesn't have anything to do with the forces that were created originally by the one who created life. And so, in order for us to come back to the truth, in order for us to come back to the spiritual, we have to see life as the divine experience that it really is. And that divine experience, when we gain access to it, gives us the power to overcome whatever forces inside of us are not trying to create better in life, are not trying to lead us in the right direction. And so only when we overcome these evil forces, only when we overcome these urges, these impulses inside of us that cause us to hurt each other, can we create a society, can we create a way of living, a type of human that is capable of receiving divinity, that is capable of understanding its importance, of understanding who it really is, of realizing its place as it's experiencing this experience. So we should all be zoche that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring us back to our glory, allow us to understand His wisdom, and we should be able to cleanse all of Klal Yisrael from all their impurities by bringing Mashiach Meher B'Yameinu.
Can you offer a little more insight to the schar v'onesh, how that's connected to prophecy?
The schar v'onesh perception of life is the perception that a person needs to be in while he's in training. So as long as a person has evil in him, the perception of schar v'onesh might be helpful for him. It needs to be there in the background in order to guide that person so that he doesn't lose his way. As soon as a person loses his inclination for evil, as soon as a person is wise enough to realize that it's in his best interest to stay as far away from evil as possible, then schar v'onesh is no longer useful for that person. Schar v'onesh starts becoming an obstacle for that person. And this is how the para is metamet tohirim and metar tameim. So the concept of schar v'oinish makes impure the pure, meaning if somebody is already pure and he doesn't have an inclination for evil, he doesn't have an inclination to hurt another human being or another thing that exists, and he just wants to do what's right, a person like that will become impure by believing in reward and punishment. What does it mean, believing? It means keeping it fresh on his mind, living life from that perspective. So of course it's true in the sense that nature reacts to everybody midah keneged midah. Nature reacts to everybody in accordance with their behavior. So of course it's true. But to keep it on your mind, to live from that perspective, is something that makes the spirit small. It makes the spirit limited. It creates an environment of discipline. It creates an environment of judgment. And so once the spirit has rid itself from the evil that's residing within it, and it doesn't want to hurt humanity any longer, then it evolves to a place where it's acting out of love. And when it's acting out of love, it doesn't have to keep reward and punishment in its perspective. And only from that place can a person come close to the king. Only from that place can a person come to prophecy. So this is why it's related, that as long as we can't clean ourselves from that, we can't go through that barrier, so we can't enter prophecy. Because we're not pure enough from the evil spirits to act strictly out of love and to never cause damage. There was another question. Ma ze omer likana? To surrender. What does it mean to surrender? Okay. So to surrender means that you clean your image of what life should be according to how you calculate, and you accept to just want to understand what life is without resisting it. So usually the way that we've been brought up, when information comes in through our senses, we judge it if it's according to how we expect, according to how we want, or it's contrary. And if it's contrary, then we get into a little struggle with it. We don't like it, we resist it, we're not good with it. And that causes inside of us that there's less peace. It doesn't affect what's happening outside of us, it's affecting what's happening inside of us. We lost our peace. And the fact that we've lost our peace, is more meaningful than whatever was taking place outside. Whatever we thought should be or could be or might be is not as meaningful as the fact that we've lost our peace over that. Because that means that now we don't have access to our spirit. We don't have access to our highest potential. So our thinking is going to be off. Whatever we're going to think or do under the influence of that disappointment is going to be of a lesser quality because of it. Our relationships might suffer. So it has a deep impact on what's happening to us spiritually, and the meaning of what's happening externally is not really that relevant. It comes and it goes. The external world is constantly coming and going. So to surrender means to remove what you think should be and replace it with what is. And instead of saying, I would want it to be X, Y, or Z, because at some point in history you came to a conclusion that that's what you want, you realize that that's not beneficial to you, that's counterproductive. You're giving reality a competition for no reason. And then sometimes reality loses. It's chaval. You're just causing yourself damage. So don't compete with reality. Reality is what it is. Surrender to it. Make it the best that you can. Use all your energy that you would have used to imagine different scenarios that you'd like, and use that energy to make what is better. Put it into something that's concrete, that's already real, and make things better for you so that the future you will be grateful and will have a better life. Said all our focus should be on the spiritual. I just heard that the Baal Shem Tov said spiritual should come all the way down to our toes. Can you explain what he meant? So the spiritual is not in a different location than the physical. In fact, the body specifically is a translator between the physical and the spiritual. So it takes data from the physical and it translates it to our spirit. That's what the body does. That's the concept of biology. is that it transfers between the two worlds. And so when we think of the spiritual, when we think of the Creator, we shouldn't think of a concept that's somewhere out there in outer space or somewhere that we can't perceive, but we should think of the actual cells within the universe, that they all have the intelligence of the Creator, they all have the life force of the Creator. And the place where we can feel that directly, the place where we can experience that aliveness of the Creator, is within our bodies. The cells of our bodies are alive, and the cells of our bodies can be experienced. And that aliveness is from the aliveness of the Creator that we're experiencing. There's no other life force to be experienced other than the life force of the Creator Himself. And so He shares life with us. He gives us life. He gives us existence in a very literal way. So that divinity, that realization, should permeate all the cells of our body. Everything, all our limbs, all our organs should be singing from the realization of truth. And for that we need the right wisdom, the right understandings that will take us to that place, that will allow us to realize in such a deep way that even our toes will feel the holiness, will feel the divinity of life.
So we don't have a calf, and we don't have the Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
So like, how the heck are we supposed to be in that place where...
We have to get to the place where we are worthy of having those things, and then we'll get those things. So the reason we don't have them is because our behavior doesn't allow for these things to take place. These things wouldn't be good for us if they took place. Like even the Midbar, when people were close to Hashem, which means people are more alive, so little things, little evil deeds that might not even be noticed in a world like ours, suddenly can become major disruptions of life, suddenly can become very meaningful. Because when people will realize how meaningful life is, they won't want to give up even an inch. They won't want to allow themselves to suffer even one bit when they'll know the value of life. It's only because we live so distant from the truth that we've sort of given up on life. We're like, okay, do whatever you want to me, it's fine, I understand, everybody's suffering, it's no big deal, it's just another day. But that's not the way that life was really designed. Life is the type of gift where you don't want to miss a second. So when people will be at that level and the behaviors will be the way that they are now, it will be a catastrophe. It will be much worse than what it is now. So as long as people are not pure, as long as people don't have control over their emotions, as long as people's hearts are not in it, are not really committed to life, so then it's dangerous for life to become too powerful. It's dangerous for humans to go up too high, to have too much, to realize too much of their glory. So this is why there's a cover on the meaning of the Spirit. There's a cover on how deep people are able to experience themselves, even though they're very big, they're infinitely big, but they can't gain access to those levels because the environment doesn't allow for it. It would become too painful. So we're limited. In the times when people knew how to create those environments, those were the times when people flourished, when the spirits could really gain access to tremendous intelligence in ways that it would make all of us look like monkeys, like literally. But as long as we don't have the environment for it, it just can't take place. It can't happen. It's not healthy that it should happen. So, and it's on us to make the best environment that we can, and in those environments, something better comes. And this has been throughout history. In those households, in those places where people were careful, where people protected the spirits, the human spirit, from being violated, in those places, big souls evolved. Big influential people came into the world through parents who really cared and really understood the value of a human soul, understood how to protect it from becoming too involved with evil, from becoming too involved with pain, from becoming too involved with the obsessions of life that everybody's running after that is completely meaningless. So it's the right environment that will breed wisdom, and so therefore we have to create the environment that can allow for it. And an environment that can allow for it is an environment of peace. It's so simple, and yet it's so complicated because we're not created peacefully. Whatever we went through in our childhood and throughout life didn't inspire us to peace. It inspired us to many different things. And so now we have to calm those forces. Now we have to rearrange how we feel about things in order to allow that peace to find us, in order to allow ourselves to come back to realizing what's really within our best interest. Because once we realize it enough, then we'll comply, then we'll behave in accordance. And then that's when the benefits start. That's when intelligence can start growing. Because that's when it won't be too painful for the spirit to realize its situation, to realize the predicament it's in.
But if we were there already, because we had a base in Mikdash and we had our amazing leaders, and how come we didn't stay there? I'm saying, like, why did we go backwards and not forward?
Because the leaders were in a very high level and the followers were in a very low level. There was a much bigger gap between the intelligences of the people. Some people didn't know how to read and write. In those times, that was normal. Women in general didn't know how to read and write till not that long ago. And so the way that the society was being run and the way that people understood what was being said was very different than today. Today, people intellectually are very developed. Emotionally and spiritually, with meaning the wisdom of life, they're very distant from because they haven't been taught. But they have very good tools of understanding. If they were taught properly, they can understand, maybe much more than in the past. People are much more sophisticated. They handle much more text. They handle, an average person by the age of 10 has probably been through the amount of text that a person used to go through in a lifetime. So we're in a different place, we're in a different time, and if we had the right information, the prophets believed that we would do very well. And we can only support that belief because it's in our best interest to believe that too. And hopefully it can happen soon, and then we'll realize it in truth. Then we'll be able to experience it live. All right. Oh, yeah, go.
You said that now we live the Pshat.
Yes.
You mean the Pshat of the Torah?
Of the Torah. The Torah has a Pshat, Remesh, Derus, and the Sod.
But we not just live the Pshat. We live behind.
You live the Sod?
Deeper. Not just the Pshat.
The Pshat, when we live, for example, when we go to work, right? What part of life are we living? We're living the Pshat. We're living the most external part of what life means. In that description, life is just survival. You go, you put in your hours, you get your food, and then you bring the next day.
Simple life.
Right. But that life is void of real meaning. The real meaning of life comes from the Chokhmah, comes from wisdom of understanding why was I created to be the way that I am? What do I really want? What's driving me? To understand all the different things that are happening inside between the organs, because this is a conversation. Life is having a conversation with itself. You're just observing. You didn't design this, you wouldn't know how to design it. Somebody designed this and you get to experience it. So you want to understand your experience. That's the Sod. The Pshat is the experience. Yeah, it's happening. This is what you do, this is what you don't do. The Sod is what is behind this experience. Why is it the way it is? What does it really mean? So those people who had wisdom, they understood the Sod. So they could direct life. They could tell life what it should be because they understood the language of life. To us, we don't understand life. We're receiving. Life is some way, and we have to try to figure out what that way is. The more we understand it, the more we can have it. If we don't understand it, we don't really have it. It's just happening.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining.